The fact is it's a perfect storm here. If you think about all the disposable income we have in West Texas with the oil boom in Odessa, the cattle money in Amarillo, all the disposable income we have here, the big industries, we have, lots of buyers. The community just doesn't want to face that it happens here in our little safe Lubbock, Texas.
Thank you for joining us tonight for our KCBD Investigates special on sex trafficking on the South Plains. I'm Case Wilbanks.
And I'm Christy Harton. Sex trafficking, human trafficking, it goes way beyond what you see in the movies. Sadly, you probably know someone who is a victim. It's their secret, their horror, their reality.
A trafficker can be anyone. It could be a parent, a pastor, a boyfriend, a family member, or a friend. They groom their victims for years.
It's happening right here on the South Plains, right here in Lubbock, and it's happening more than you may believe.
For the next half hour, we'll explain this crisis in our town. We'll talk about available resources and how you can help, but more importantly, how to get help if you're in this horrific situation.
We have to warn you, this content isn't easy to talk about. What you see may be hard. It may not be suitable for younger children, but we believe it's extremely important for you to be aware.
Human trafficking, it is modern-day slavery of children and adults.
The Texas Attorney General's office says 25 million people are enslaved worldwide, and there are 79,000 victims of youth and minor sex trafficking in Texas at any given time.
In 2018, there were 760 cases of human trafficking in California, the most in the nation. Texas came in second with 455 cases. Trafficking can be found anywhere, in homes, massage parlors, hotels and motels, and online with sites like Backpage or even Facebook.
Shared Hope International, a research and rescue group, says an underage prostitute can be raped by 6,000 men if they are in the situation for 5 years. They could have at least 10 to 15 buyers per night.
I prayed to God one night, please get me away from this man. I don't care what you do, just get me away.
Now, most parents would do anything to protect their children from harm, but in some households right here in Lubbock, parents are deliberately putting their children in dangerous situations so they can make a profit.
For some sex trafficking survivors, the abuse continued for years, even into adulthood. For their own protection, we will not be showing you their faces, but their voices carry a powerful message. Shaylee Sanders has their stories of survival.
I was trafficked by my father. Started around 7 or 8, right here in Lubbock, Texas.
A parent's role is to protect, but for these survivors, one of the most dangerous places they could be was at home.
So my mom was my trafficker. There was no out.
And for many survivors, the fear of reporting the abuse can be greater than enduring it.
I knew that if you spoke up, that they were going to remove you from your household. And that's not something that you want to do as a child.
For this survivor, her stepfather's debt became her burden.
Hey, we have to pay this guy back, so you need to start selling weed at school. And then when you get out of school, I'll pick you up. And we have to go by his house to make this payment. And you have to pay him whatever he wants you to do.
Making the decision to sacrifice herself to save her family from his threats.
I could get your sister, your baby sister, to do it if you won't do it. But I could beat your mom. Would you like that? So it was more, I have to do it to protect.
These women, and unfortunately thousands of others, have watched as the people who they thought loved them the most ripped away their childhood.
So I'd go to get out of the shower and my towel wasn't there. I'm a 7-year-old little girl, I'm having to ask my dad to bring me a towel. That kind of progressed.
And when a parent wasn't sexually assaulting them, they were handing them over to someone who was.
Dad's friends, dad's girlfriends.
Some were business partners, some were friends.
Children's bodies in exchange for drugs and cash. And when they did try to run away, it was never far enough.
He's came back and got me plenty of times and drug me back. But it's hope on the other side of that. It's someone that can help you, someone that has like a spidey sense that can come and figure there's something wrong. It's trust and faith in God, because he hears your prayers. He He's there. He's real.
Hope, prayers, and in some of these survivors' cases, police officers who followed their instincts.
I prayed to God one night, please get me away from this man. I don't care what you do, just get me away. And the next morning I was picked up by the Lubbock Police Department. And I remember just, thank you.
These women are still healing, and thanks to Open Door, they have found each other, a safe place to call home, and they are learning what real love truly looks like.
There's laughter, there's a lot to love. There's family, true family. I get to live.
Thank you, Shaylee. Organizations in Lubbock are working to combat sex trafficking in our region. One of those entities is Voice of Hope Rape Crisis Center.
We talked with Leslie Timmons, the education director at Voice of Hope, who said when tackling the issue, it's important to know what it is and to educate people on what it looks like. Katie Main has that story.
People are realizing that it's here in Lubbock. We're educating people that are working with sex trafficking victims. So we're making progress, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Leslie Timmons, education director at Voice of Hope Rape Crisis Center, said, sex trafficking does not always look like what you think. She said traffickers aren't necessarily the kidnapping pimps you see in the media.
It could be somebody that looks like me or, anybody that you see on the street.
In order to combat it, it's important to know what it does look like.
Manipulating, grooming for months at a time. Traffickers can take all the time in the world.
Most often, it happens through social media. It can happen when children and teens are vulnerable, sharing too much information online.
We're having a fight with my mom, I hate her. Oh, well, I remember fighting with my mom too, it's awful. And so they make that connection.
Timmons said parents need to know how social media works. Have your children give you their password and know who they're talking to online. That includes Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram, even gaming systems. Timmons said traffickers are now showing up on Fortnite.
The typical kind of Stockholm syndrome that you see where the trafficker brainwashes them into thinking that they have a relationship and they're going to be in love and they're going to have a life together.
Before they know it, the victim is in this life and they can't find their way out.
And they say, oh, I need help paying rent, or I need help with, I need some money. Would you do this for me? Maybe just, dance one night at a strip club.
People tend to think Lubbock doesn't have to deal with big city problems like trafficking. But Timmons said West Texas is a perfect storm with our big industries and disposable money. Because of this, she said it's important to educate people about the realities of sex trafficking in our region.
Anybody that has direct activity with youth, it's very important to educate those people, to recognize the signs and ask the right questions.
Voice of Hope is dedicated and committed to educating people on sex trafficking and sexual assault. All of the services they offer are free. They have a hotline available 24 hours a day.
Now let's talk about the buyer, the person purchasing this human being. They're mostly men. Experts in prevention of sexual assault and sex trafficking say with guys being the buyers, it's on them, on us, to end it. We spoke with the founder of South Plains Men Challenging Men, who says buyers are continuing slavery in the United States.
Women have been fighting these crimes for centuries, and women get things done. If women could end sexual assault and sex trafficking, they'd have done it by now. It's on men to get up, to stand up and say, hey, this will no longer happen in our city, our town, our state, our country.
Kenneth Castillo is the primary prevention coordinator at Voice of Hope, formerly the Lubbock Rape Crisis Center. He says 97% of the perpetrators that come through his office are men. Even more of the buyers of girls and boys for sex are also men.
It's the small portion of the male population that's doing this, that's making the rest of us look bad. So we need to start doing some stuff and put down that video game controller, put down that remote control, and get up and stand up and make a difference.
To make that difference, Castillo has founded South Plains Men Challenging Men. It's an organization to end violence against women. His mission to prevent these acts, these crimes against women and young children, has been personal.
The reason I continue to do what I do is when I was 14, I had a friend who was 15 She was trafficked by her mom between the age of 5 until she was 10.
After his friend's death in a car accident, he's never forgotten her or the goal of making lives better for everyone, especially the more vulnerable, who were then coerced into trafficking.
Predators will fish in pools of vulnerability, whatever that might be, whether it's on the internet, somebody that needs a place to stay, somebody who is hungry. They will fish in those pools of vulnerability to catch whatever they want.
Castillo says the disconnect for men comes in the pursuit of power instead of true love.
At a strip club or even purchasing sex, you're paying for power and control. It has no intimacy going, there is no intimacy there. It has everything to do with power and control.
And most seeking that power with their money are educated family men. And Castillo says there are other ways to get that power, but this is not it. And those men need to think twice about what they're doing.
To think about not just the wife, but the kids, your grandkids that you will eventually have, your nieces, your nephews. It could easily be them.
If you need help, here are some ways you can text or call. Take a picture of this. We'll show this screen 3 more times during this show if you're not able to write down these numbers. We also have all of this information on kcbd.com and the KCBD mobile app.
Coming up, combating sex trafficking, a 24/7 job for Lubbock Police.
This has been a big issue for about 5,000 years now. You can read in the Bible about sex trafficking, rape, sexual exploitation, labor trafficking.
The fact of the matter is, predators will fish in pools of vulnerability.
Law enforcement has been working to adapt to this long-lasting but ever-changing issue, working to find those traffickers. It's more common in Lubbock than many might think.
Amanda Ruiz spoke to one detective who's fighting this daily battle. He has asked us not to reveal his identity in fear of jeopardizing his work.
We were doing some stings a few years ago, and I could hear the trafficker in the background trying to coach them on where to go and what to say. We got the victim in custody, and come to find out she had multiple STDs and she'd been tortured and held against her will.
And that was here in Lubbock?
Yes.
That's insane.
To the everyday West Texan, sex trafficking might not seem like a problem here.
We watch it on TV, and then we turn the TV off and go to sleep and say, thank God that doesn't happen here, when in reality it does.
But to this LPD detective and his team,
Lubbock's not immune to it.
it's real, and they deal with it every day.
Some of these cases can take up to years to investigate. Some are fairly quick. We scour the internet through different medias, whether it's through sites that are known for prostitution, or we have databases that collect information for us. We work with our analysts. We reach out to advocates and teachers.
He says the team will also go on various stings all around the city trying to bust different sex trafficking rings. But this detective admits it's not easy.
Anybody that can be exploited can become a prostitute. The buyers are the same way in the sense that it looks like everybody, whether it's a preacher, law enforcement official, judge, you name it. And every career field in this world is purchasing sex.
Once these detectives come across a victim of sex trafficking, it's a battle to save them.
We've dealt with the same victims over and over. And each time we encounter them, we're encountering a different person, because how they're going to react is not how they're going to react the last time. And it may not be the same way they react the next time we encounter them.
But with every effort, their passion remains the same.
These people are victims of a crime, and it's our responsibility as law enforcement and even society, citizens, to protect people that are victims of crimes.
I was a child when it happened, and I was trafficked by a family member that did it for years.
After assistance by law enforcement and medical professionals, the survivors still need help. Open Door Survivor Housing is one of the ways survivors can find a hand up and encouragement to live their lives after breaking free from their captors.
When you're taking someone who's been literally brainwashed, trying to help them exit, trying to help them into a different life, it is a long-term healing process.
In January of 2019, Open Door Lubbock opened new doors to provide transitional housing and resources to survivors of trafficking.
What we do is provide somebody with a place to stay during that time, with their own apartment, so they can kind of learn what it's like to live in their own apartment and what that responsibility looks like. And then during that time, we provide wraparound support, very holistic care.
With specialized therapists and advocates, survivors are given 6 to 18 months to work through their case in a safe space, take classes to regain life skills, and readjust to a new future.
What are their dreams? What healing needs to happen here, and how can we support them in that?
Survivor Housing has 20 units and is free to those survivors. It's funded through the state and other general grants and individual donations.
And we have to have community partnerships. We have to work together on this, and if we don't, the people who suffer the most are survivors.
And Open Door is determined to have someone walk through this new journey of life with survivors.
Know you are cared about. There are people out there who want to support you, not because you're a project, not because you're so broken that you need saving, but because you deserve to have a good life.
Up next, state officials have made the problem of sex trafficking a priority.
all children are at risk for human trafficking. But there are certain risk factors that heighten that risk. Kids that are truant, kids that are homeless, kids that have been turned out or have run away from their homes, kids with learning disabilities, mental disabilities, physical disabilities, kids with addictions. The key that makes children most at risk for trafficking is accessibility. If the trafficker can access you away from the people that are supposed to protect you.
That was Deputy Criminal Chief Krista Lieberg-Melton with the Texas Attorney General's office. She's been tasked with heading the Human Trafficking and Transitional Organized Crime Unit. One of the most recent actions taken by Attorney General Ken Paxton to combat sex trafficking was the filing of a brief to support federal law giving prosecutors the ability to take legal action against websites hosting sex trafficking ads. Backpage.com has been one site that has been prosecuted by the AG's office. The company pleaded guilty last April to human trafficking in Texas. It was considered the largest online sex trafficking marketplace in the U.S.
Both the AG's office and the governor's office here in Texas have helped fund counselors in Lubbock to assist with survivors of sex trafficking. Anna Orsini has a story.
This is huge, and it's not just something where we can turn on a switch and it changes. It's really about changing the way we look at these victims for forever.
A plan set forward by Governor Greg Abbott to change the narrative of human trafficking here in Texas.
Our state wanted to do a better job of identifying these youth proactively and then giving them the services they need up front, so we're not arresting them, we're not criminalizing them, and they're getting what they need to heal and thrive.
Since 2015, the governor's office has spent $40 million trying to combat sex trafficking, a vast majority of that money going towards victim services.
Trying to change the mindset of looking at these victims in a trauma-informed way and understanding that their behaviors are trauma responses to what they've been through, the extreme physical, sexual, and emotional abuse that they are going through.
But here at home, it's still a work in progress. Christy Martinez, a local counselor for sex trafficking survivors, says she's grateful someone finally recognized the lack of resources.
For a while, I was the only sex trafficking survivor counselor, and that was really difficult, and now we have 2 more, I think, and so the services were kind of lacking, but it's great to see that now the governor's office is really putting in more money, especially in our community.
But she says they need all the help they can get. It's a job that takes time for survivors and takes a toll on the counselors, fighting on the front lines, taking each hit of trauma, shielding each survivor from their past.
Instead of running, instead of saying like, I need to save myself, you're like, no, if I can just sit in this with this chaos and this war and this pain with this other person, at the end of it, it's going to be worth it, and they are going to get through this, but they need someone who's willing to step on that battlefield with them.
Taking it one battle at a time in the war against sex trafficking. And the governor's office says more change is coming, reviewing their latest set of grants right now, hoping to make some more available sometime soon.
It was multiple times. The first time was my stepdad. And it started here in Lubbock.
There are people in our community that really do want the very best for you and want to love you and meet you where you're at and help you move forward.
And you can be one of those people. There are multiple agencies here on the South Plains that help those in need, whether that's handing out goodie bags to dancers at gentlemen's clubs or just teaching those in the community what the signs are.
The Human Rescue Coalition says it wants everyone to get involved because this issue reaches far more people than many may think.
One of the things we really like to do is invite people to come out to our monthly meetings. You can come and learn about this issue, learn more about what the opportunities are, because this is a very dynamic issue. Sometimes we're going to need something one month that we might not need the next. And so those opportunities to connect and partner within our community are what's really valuable to us.
Once again, here are some ways to text or call if you need help. If you're not able to write these numbers down, we also have this information at kcbd.com and our KCBD mobile app.
We want to thank you for joining us for this KCBD Investigate special report.
Good night.